Three, two, one.
Welcome to Immersive Reactions.
And welcome back to Immersive Reactions. Today we're doing a deep dive in what are the differences between the Shawshank Redemption 1994 film versus the Stephen King novel of the same name. That being said, I am very interested in what the differences are between the books and the source material. I would say that's my biggest thing with fiction works is how they differ from the source material, or how the source material was taken the wrong things pulled from the source material, or how it's like different or whatever.
I want to know how it's morphed. How they
Yeah,
morphed it.
I'm interested in how the characters are different, all the difference there. Stephen King is a great author, and no one needs me to say that, but I personally think he's a great author. A lot of wonderful horror books, and my personal favorite of his is the Dark Tower series. I read that when I was like a teenager, and I love that book. And so we will watch this now.
I almost forgot. I'd hate to deprive you of this. Salvation lies within. Yes, sir.
Frank Darabont's 1994 film The Shawshank Redemption has become one of the most popular movies of all time. The tale of Andy Dufresne's time in Shawshank prison is even the highest rated movie ever if you ask IMDb.
But the inspiration for the movie came from Stephen King's short story titled Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. The 100 or so pages worth of novella appeared in a collection that also featured two other future movies, Apt Pupil and The Body, which was the basis for Stand By Me.
But we're not talking about either of those today. We're talking about Morgan Freeman officially becoming the best narrator of all time.
That's all it takes, really.
He is.
Pressure
His voice
and
is great.
time.
So, without further ado and no restraint on spoilers, let's get into it. What's the difference?
I would pay a lot for narrated versions.
Well, kids,
of
there
Morgan
are a
Freeman's voice
ton
over
of
books.
similarities between the book and movie. Both feature a banker named Andy Dufresne falsely imprisoned for the murder of his wife and her lover. The stoic Andy makes fast friends with prison everyman Red, and after long years of struggling to maintain his humanity and hope, Andy escapes through a hole in his cell wall kept hidden by a variety of posters of pinup girls.
Don't forget the pipe.
Right, and he crawls through 500 yards of raw sewage to freedom.
But the book and movie aren't exactly the same. To start with, the two main characters' appearances are different. Book Andy is described as short and mousy, while movie Andy is tall. Tim Robbins is the tallest guy in any given scene in the movie tall. And
Just as an aside, if you want to put up the video that we're watching in a separate tab on the computer, if you're on a computer, to give this guy credit for us watching and reacting to his stuff. I am not influencing this video to get any more views than he already has. It's negligible. I don't have that many people watching this video comparably to him. So just as an aside to help him get a view, it's going to be in the bottom of our video in the description.
Book Red is named Red because he's Irish and has red hair, which is changed to an offhanded joke in the film.
Oh, okay.
Name's Red.
Red. Why do they call you that?
Maybe it's because I'm Irish.
But the most obvious significant difference between the book and movie is the perspective. While the film is of course narrated by the greatest voice ever, the book is quite literally Red's memoirs, his written account of the legend of Andy Dufresne.
The film, however, opens with a traditionally narrative retelling of Andy's trial and conviction for double murder. From there, the film offers no framework to explain the omniscient narration other than it's a movie, and we're all just kind of used to that sort of thing.
Many minor differences include the side characters. For example, the book features several different wardens, running through a couple different guys before landing on Warden Norton, one of the main antagonists of the film.
Put your trust in the Lord. Your ass belongs to me.
The toughest screw to ever walk a turn at Shawshank, Byron Hadley, who plays in the entire film, is gone and retired well before the climax of the book.
So the story's basically the same, some of the supporting cast is superficially different, great, whatever. But here's where this episode of What's the Difference gets interesting. Most of our adaptations have to cut things wholesale from their novel counterparts, leaving behind a more efficient, focused version of the story. What we see with Shawshank is a movie that adds to the story to fill out its near 2.5-hour runtime.
Easy peasy, Japanese.
Brooks, for example, is the longtime inmate who runs the library in both the book and the movie. But Book Brooks is introduced, paroled, and leaves Shawshank crying in the space of a few pages. The bird Jake is not Brooks's in the book, but instead belonged to an inmate with a relatively short 8-year stay in the prison. The most significant thing about him is that Jake the bird shows up starved to death shortly after his release, a metaphor for the learned helplessness of Shawshank's residents.
The threat of Brooks' institutionalization in the movie is much more direct, however. Movie Brooks has been at Shawshank longer than anybody, like his novella counterpart, but the movie dives much deeper into Brooks' experience as a heartbreaking example of what prison has taken from these men. The sequence of Brooks on the outside, narrated by Brooks' letter to the guy still in Shawshank, is entirely created for the film. It's also yet another shift away from the exclusively read voice of the novella.
That's the basic theme of this adaptation. Take characters from the book and expand upon them to flesh out the movie. Aside from the enormous additions to Brooks' presence in the story, the movie expands on Captain of the Guards Byron Hadley and Warden Norton. While their characters are the same in both mediums, the movie upgrades them both to, essentially, co-antagonists.
Hadley and Norton are bad dudes in the book, for sure, but in the movie they're ever-present and even worse. The second time we meet Hadley on screen, he beats a man to death, which doesn't explicitly happen in the book at all.
If I hear so much as a mouse fart in here the rest of the night, I swear by God and Sonny Jesus, you will all visit the infirmary.
And when a young inmate, Tommy Williams, shows up with a story that could get Andy's name cleared,
which happens in the book as well.
But in the book, Norton just transfers Tommy to a different prison and sends Andy to solitary for 2 weeks. In the movie, Norton and Hadley straight up murder Tommy and lock Andy away for 2 whole months.
Of course, in both book and movie, Norton wants Tommy's story to go away so that Andy can continue cooking the books for all the shady dealings.
I understand both. 100% I understand both. For a shortened runtime, they said this book was only 100 pages, so it wouldn't take long to read. But for someone who's watching this for 2 hours, from beginning to end, towards the climax, you're looking for something to go over the top to really show that these guys are like a imminent threat for Andy, to flip the script on him. That is the turning point for Andy, when the guy gets killed and he gets thrown in for a month in solitary. That is the turning point where he decides, okay, it's time for me to go and do this now. Which, that happens in the book to a lesser extent, but I understand both. It works in both circumstances.
And side hustles the wardens got going, but the money laundering operation pays off in very different ways. In the book, after Andy's escape, he doesn't share the evidence of corruption in Shawshank, and the warden just retires a broken man. And again, owing to the exclusively Red's voice structure of the novel, we don't find out what happened to Norton simply because Red never did.
In the movie, though, Andy really sticks it to Norton and Hadley, making his escape with all the evidence needed to arrest Hadley and convince Norton to kill himself instead of facing the music.
That's crazy, because that seems to me like such a more...
I would like to say the book part, to be honest.
That seems way more, like the movie version seems way more Stephen King than the book version. But I guess you also have that Stephen King where things sort of crazy stuff that's happening just sort of fizzles out sometimes, where you're expecting something big, but something big doesn't happen. He leads you down paths, like where you're like, this could happen, and then he sneaks in another path that you never thought of.
Andy also makes off with almost $400,000 of Norton's ill-gotten dollars by assuming the identity of Randall Stevens, the man Andy invented to help with money laundering.
Book Andy, however, didn't leave with any of Norton's money. In fact, after Andy was arrested for his wife's murder, but before he was sent to Shawshank, he and a banker friend set out to move all of Andy's assets under the fake name Peter Stevens. While Andy was in prison, his banker friend managed the affairs of Peter Stevens, making investments and stockpiling a tidy nest egg, just sitting in a safe deposit box, the key to which is buried under a piece of volcanic rock, under an oak tree in a hayfield on the north side of Buxton.
All that to say, expanding on Hadley and Norton not only filled out the story to feature length, it also expanded on a central theme of Stephen King's original novella. The idea that there's a part of every person that can't be put behind bars, that will always be free so long as one can hope. The novella puts forth this theme through Andy's painstaking, nearly 3 decades long escape plan. The movie, however, adds the direct fight against the system personified by Hadley and Norton, and Andy's very real and damaging victory over the pair of them.
And this perhaps puts a finger on the spirit of adaptations in general. While a book is able to ponder ideas for pages at a time, the visual medium of film has a different way of going about it.
Yeah.
Because movies in general benefit from a bad guy that needs defeating, The Shawshank Redemption pulled 2 antagonists up from a pool of several to focus on.
They send you here for life. That's exactly what they take.
The good guys in the story get the same treatment. The threat of Red's parole hearings is an invention for the movie. While the book briefly ponders the idea of rehabilitation, Red is given a series of scenes in the movie that illustrate his changing views on the subject through performance more than text. In short, this is a film adaptation that doesn't just fill time, but takes advantage of the different medium to flesh out the themes of the novella. That's all for this episode of What's the Difference? We're heading back to the...
I'm curious to see what Stephen King thought of that.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm gonna look that up very quickly. What? Okay. So Stephen King said he loved the movie. Which is, it's good to see that. Like, a lot of like author to movie adaptions, like, often the movie gets the source material wrong, or they do it in a wrong way, like a bad way. And one second, I forgot to do this the other day. Sharpen. Okay. And a lot of things that I've seen that are adapted from books, like another example is the Dark Tower movie, because I love the Dark Tower book from Stephen King, is very bad.
Oh.
Yeah. It's just, it tries to pack way too much information because it is the opposite scenario of this, where the Dark Tower series is many books over a long period of time, and the Shawshank Redemption, they said, was 100 pages. So they had to invent stuff, but with longer text, sometimes they don't get enough of the source material in there to begin with. And then they start messing with stuff anyway, and it makes everything just muddled, and you lose the message completely. And that happens with directors who don't care about the source material. That happens with directors who are using something to create a completely different thing from the book, which is bad. But when they do it like this, when they expand upon the characters, you read that passage in the book, it was a couple pages about Brooks, and it was just a retrospective of a letter that he wrote, and he comes and he leaves. But that's an interesting story that we can expand upon. It fits way better, and it makes clear goals for the audience. With Norton, they wanted to make him the villain. He was a villain because he's the warden, so he's like trying to maintain control over the prison, and he has like backdoor schemes and stuff, but he wasn't like a murderer like he is in the movie. So it creates a clear and present danger to an audience watching. Sometimes you gotta fluff some of that stuff up to make the concepts work a little better, work a little faster. As for a book, you don't need to.
I think Andy went in and then the more and more experience he's had, the more things he had seen while being a person, he started to become a criminal.
Yeah.
With the manipulation and the schemes and this and that, but he also was teaching and redeeming the prison, and then making his own ways, and then helping his friends, and this and that.
Yeah.
So. And
they sort of flipped that from the book, because in the book they said that he and a friend had set up
Yeah.
a false person to
Before.
continue investing before he got into jail, which kind of in the movie he was like, I was clean on the outside. I had to come to prison to be a criminal.
Yeah.
Which I feel like makes Andy more relatable.
I am glad that Stephen King loved the movie
It's a
version of
great
it. That's good.
it's a great fresh take on what he wrote. Probably he probably watched it and was probably like, damn, why didn't I think of that? But his stands on its own.
Yes.
He wrote it. It's just someone felt so inspired by it to expand upon it in a tasteful way that made it feel like it was coming from him.
That's a huge, like...
Because even me, when I thought of the warden killing himself and like killing the dude, I was like, that feels to me like it's 100% Stephen King. But it wasn't. It's interesting. I'm definitely going to do more of like book to movie retrospectives because that was great. That was the funnest I've ever had doing a deep dive.
I enjoyed this one.
Yeah. It's for you probably haven't seen a lot of Stephen King
Nope.
or read any of the books. They're not really meant for. He's a very different type of writer. It's a good thing, but normally people aren't like attracted to that type of stuff. I think it's wonderful, but anyway,
I enjoyed the deep dive. This is one of the... I have to agree. It was a really great deep dive.
yep. Anyway, we will do more of these in the future for more of movies. And thank you for watching Immersive Reactions.
Until next time.